Welcome, Christina, Stephanie, Salamar. We've got a nice group here. If it's at all possible, I think it would make us all feel more connected if we could um, open our screen. So if that's possible, please do that. I'm MaryBeth Love, and I'm going to be leading the seminar today with my colleagues. Let me just begin with sharing with you that together we work on and run the Metro College Success Program, which is a program for graduation with excellence and equity. And we do that through um, engaging, supportive, rigorous, and socially responsible education. Next, please. I'd like to introduce you to Savita Malik, who is next to me on the face here. And she's the Director of Curriculum and Faculty Development, and also our colleague, Alicia Sheda, who will be working with us on this presentation today. Metro serves low-income, underrepresented, first-generation students. 91% of our students are low-income, first-gen, college-going, and underrepresented. 32 are first-year students. No, we serve 32% of the first-time students at San Francisco State. So we have about 1,200 students every freshman, every fall, about 1,000 actually. And 46% of our students are URM students, and we cover 40% of all URM students at San Francisco State. Next slide. We have a very short presentation, so buckle down and we'll spend 2 minutes listening to this. Thanks, Alicia. Okay. Metro is really a experience where we cohort, as you heard, we cohort students for those first 2 years. We'd like to ask you to, just to make sure you're all awake, ask you to put in the chat a reflection of one empowering experience in higher education and one disempowering experience. And then we can all then we'll share it, and we'll just spend a minute looking at that. So we're asking you to share one word about what was empowering or disempowering in your higher education experience. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So this is a image of the social ecological model, which shows that education inequities happens at multiple levels, so that for students, as we want them to be civically engaged and involved in our democracy, we think it's important for them to bring critical consciousness to all levels, all the inequities that they experience in their lives, and particularly in higher education, to each of these different levels. And this explains for us why we are using civic learning and democracy education and tying that as a powerful path for student success, because the students that we serve are experiencing these inequities and they don't understand, or they often come to us as freshmen, as Ronnie, our student, spoke about earlier, not being able to name them or understand them, and not understanding the levers of power for change that can exist at each one of this model of the it's called the social ecological model. Next slide, please. This is the story in one, we call this our Uber egg, of what we do in Metro. We're going to talk more about the education course pathways, because that's really where we get into civic learning and democracy education the most. But I want to make sure that you understand that we have, again, a third of the freshmen, and that we have them in 7 different academies of 140 students each, and each academy has a theme, and those themes are broad career themes. So we have an academy in education and STEM and engineering and liberal and creative arts, education, health. So the students begin to think about what they can do in their profession to be agents of social change and justice, and that everything that we teach them is sort of geared towards that way of thinking. I think I missed business as one of our academies. We also block enroll students so that they're in more than mostly 2, sometimes 3 courses together each semester, and we do a core repetition of those academic skills in order to boost them forward towards graduation. So that Savi is going to talk much more. All the courses are general education course pathways. We also provide wraparound services for our students. Our philosophy in the wraparound services is that we don't turn students away. We advise students, we tutor them, we peer advise, we do early interventions if they've got um, failing grades. We do a lot of outreach to students, for instance, students who we can see haven't re-enrolled. And every academy has a coordinator, and that coordinator stays in touch with their students in their cohort each semester for the first 4 semesters. And then we also build community not only with our students, but also with our faculty. So we have a core group of faculty that teach those Metro Core courses. And then we have trained faculty who know our program, that have worked with us for a long time, who teach our math, English, critical thinking, and public speaking. And we work with them not only to work together, but to develop the curriculum together, to understand how issues of civic engagement and justice play in the classroom and in learning. We do an integration of the GE classes so people really understand the relationship between English and speaking and writing. And that commitment is a 45-hour commitment. And every new faculty that comes in goes through that training with us. We also have something called the Metro Data System Student Success System, which is a Salesforce system that lets us track everything. So, for instance, our coordinators have goals that they have to sit down with each one of their students once a semester. They put that in Salesforce. Our goal is that they see at least 80% of the students that they're supposed to. And we can look at that. We can also use it for strategic planning. If we do a campaign, for instance, to make sure students that have 2 or more DWFs re-enroll, we can go in and say, how are we doing with that? And do we need more support to get it done? Or is it not having an impact? Or how is it having an impact? Next slide, please. I'm going to turn this now to Savita, who is going to go through our coursework and how that relates to civic engagement and learning.
Thanks, MaryBeth. So as you heard, Metro is a cohorted learning community, and they take 2 classes together every semester for the first 2 years. The first year courses are really geared towards first year experience, getting them connected to campus, and have a deep focus on education equity. Those are linked with the oral comm, critical thinking, math, and English requirements that all students have to take in their first year at San Francisco State. From those courses, they move into the second year. And the second year courses really geared towards, in the first semester, geared towards public health and social justice. And in their second semester of their second year is a history of social movements course. As MaryBeth mentioned, all of these courses ring up towards their general education requirements. They have to have these classes in order to graduate. But really the fundamental foundation of these courses is lifelong learning and self-development. So the goal is really to have students in their first year really connect on an individual level to the campus, to themselves as college students, to see themselves as college students. And in that second year, it's to see them connect to community with the public health and social justice course and connect them to these larger systems and structures when they talk about history and how folks have resisted oppressive forces in their communities and in their worlds. Our hope is that students walk away with a vision and an importance of civic engagement, but as a vehicle for their community good, so that to get them engaged in their communities, but really towards elevating communities and moving them towards liberation. Alicia, next slide, please. Thank you. So again, the coursework that we've developed, it's sequenced, right? It goes from semester first year to the second year courses that they take. That first course really is geared towards structural and economic inequities, but really talks about education equity and gets students really excited and thinking about, they come in with a really serious educational debt, many of them, from underfunded high schools, from all sorts of community violence that they come from. But understanding that it's not about them individually. This is about the larger systems and structures at play here. That really we're not talking about an achievement gap. They're not struggling to achieve. They don't have an opportunity in the same way that many of their counterparts coming to college that are not first generation, that have a little bit more economic wealth, are coming to college with. The goal in that first class is really to build consciousness, to develop a critical consciousness about some of these issues that they're seeing in communities, but also just to see that there are larger structural forces at play here and that it's not about their individual deficit, that there's other things going on here. The second semester, we really move towards this idea of community empowerment. So students learn about a community, they pick a particular community they want to focus on and learn about a health issue that might be plaguing that community, and also ways in which that community has resisted and things that they've done to really make their own lives better. They talk to local change agents and they work within their community to think this through. And then we really kind of focus at the end around taking action in solidarity with their communities, really kind of giving civic learning a life in this course. The last course they take, History of Social Movements, really focuses on hidden histories. One of the assignments that they do in that class is they write a book chapter and in a group of history that they haven't studied yet or that they haven't seen. And that book chapter is really geared towards making sure that the voices of community that they belong to are elevated and seen and learned about. The other piece of this is really the kind of anchor in how to be a part of social and political change. So we do a whole section on social movements. What is a social movement? What are trigger events? What are things that happen in social movements that really help push an agenda forward, and how they can be part of it, and on a lot of different levels, from an individual level all the way up to systems and policy level change. So these three courses really kind of fit within the framework of civic learning, but in a way that really kind of meets the needs of first and second year students also. Many of them come in working full time. Many of them come in often having family obligations. So we're not talking about, sending students out into a community setting and having them do work. We're having them bring their community level work into the classroom and having them really study what's going on in their community and have concrete ways that they can take action to make change within their own realm. Next slide, please, Alicia. So the major outcomes that we hope after the three courses that they take with us is that they really do develop critical consciousness. They develop the ability to critically think about some of the issues that they see in their world. We really do want to cultivate agents of change. We're not interested in just having students come in and get a degree. We want them to make change wherever they end up. We have students come in engineering. If they end up in engineering firms, are they asking questions? Are they challenging some of the ways in which engineers might be, perpetuating a status quo, for example? And then we really work to foster solidarity and validation within our classes. Our young people are eager, they're hungry, they want to have this information, and they work together to really move this forward. I'll also just add real quick here that the student outcomes are actually the same as our faculty outcomes. We really want our faculty to develop their own critical consciousness around how they're teaching and reflection on their practice. We want our faculty to be agents of change, both in the classroom and at the larger university and the institution that we work in, and that we build community within our faculty ranks as well, and solidarity among mostly contingent faculty who teach our courses in Metro. Next slide, please, Alicia. Awesome, thank you. So you saw a little bit of the data in the video that was referenced earlier, but our impact is pretty significant. You can see our retention rate, 86% of our Metro students are persisting into their second year. And this is based on a comparison with a group that matches on admit term, ethnicity, income, where they place in the English or math pathway, and whether they're taking stats or calculus. So these are comparable students that are not in Metro at the university. And you can see our Metro students are doing significantly better than the comparison group. Same thing about graduation. Within 6 years, our Metro students are consistently graduating at a significantly higher rate than their peers, 56% for the Metro students versus 47% for our comparison group. This slide goes into a little bit more detail about campus-wide retention rates, so not just our comparison group, but also looks at non-Metro students as well as the university as a whole. Again, you can see the Metro bar is in blue here. You can see that 85% of our Metro students are retained after their first year, and 75% of our Metro students are retained after their second year into their fifth term. Again, much higher than the university overall and even the non-Metro students. You can see in this gray bar here, 81% to 65% here. So we're doing well. The program is having an impact. So the last data slide that we want to show you here is how we're also closing the equity gap. So our first year retention rate for underrepresented minority students on campus is also much better than the Metro students. And you can see this one kind of breaks it down over time from 2014 to 2020, which is the latest data that we have. You can see our retention rate, again, just stays significantly higher than our comparison group, which is the orange bar underneath. Same thing, second year retention into the fifth term. You see the Metro students as well do really well compared to the comparison group. So what we're doing is having an impact. I'm going to turn it back over to MaryBeth, who's going to talk a little bit more about our core values in the program.
Muted, MaryBeth.
As we discussed and thought about coming and speaking to you about our program, we really realized that you are embedded in an institution and doing many wonderful things, I'm sure, yourselves. We'd like to ask you to give us some feedback from your own experience, because I'm sure we could all be sitting in a seminar and listening and learning from all of you. What we want to ask you to do is get a pencil and paper, and as I'm going through these values, just make notes of which ones stand out to you and which ones that you might, that you feel you're addressing in the work you're doing, or that are particularly important to the focus of this seminar today, which is civic learning and democracy education. So I'm going to go through these first three, and be forewarned, we have 9. So our first one is community connectedness and purposeful community building. Here we this value builds caring and compassionate relationship between students, faculty, and staff. The purpose of this is to help challenge marginalization and build a sense of belonging. I think we could wrap this value around the importance of compassion and care for each other. We often say to the students, it's really important. It's less important to get ahead. It's more important to lock arms and get ahead together. So what comes out of this is we have students working with other students to help them succeed, and also to really reflect on the critical consciousness that they're developing together with each other through conversation and compassionate understanding. The second value is that we don't teach anything that doesn't have meaning. So the value of a curriculum that helps students understand and articulate how and what they are learning contributes to this larger sense of civic purpose and provides the tools for meaningful involvement in improving structures that support justice. So we have them do math problems based on issues that are real to them, maybe like stop and frisk, and what do we know about, is there a significant difference between the groups that are stopped and not? What does that tell us? How do we understand that? So, and we do that with English. They write about matters as history, as Savi mentioned. They write about history related to the unspoken history or people in their community that have really made a contribution to history that isn't widely known in our history books. Public speaking and critical thinking, as well as our core courses. So they're over and over bringing the development of these skills that are so important to this issue of civic learning. We really do believe that creates a fire in their belly and helps them understand what we're teaching and how the tools they are getting are relevant to their lives and our democracy. We move with a deep belief in our students' academic capacity and agency. We value and believe in valuing our students' academic capacity that leads to high expectations and creates self-confidence in their ability to act as social agents of change. I think it's really important for you to understand we're now in our 13th year, so we've had a lot of time to develop this. And one of the ways that we've developed this academic capacity and believing in students is the moving to a contract grading, which we're not going to talk much about, but it really is having that expectation that every student can succeed and work closely to evaluate and move and motivate themselves to succeed. Next slide, please. Or let me just take a second here. Don't go on, and I'm going to ask all of you to put a couple of words on pencil, on paper, about which one of these you particularly, or just anything that you might like to share about any one of these three values that really steer our ship. So we'll just take 1 minute for you to do that, and then we'll move on to the next three. Whenever you think we're ready, Alicia. Savita?
Okay, thanks, MaryBeth. So the next three of our core values really get at the heart of what we do with students and faculty and staff. So number 4 is accessible resources and support for students and faculty. You know, part of graduation at any institution is really knowing your options and meeting all of the requirements that an institution puts out there. And our support exists on multiple levels to help students reach these goals. Students build what they are part of, and they help build the education system they want to see and engage in. So there's really we really work hard to not put stigma around accessing resources and support. The tutors are former Metro students, and the tutor space is really student-centered. There's drop-in services, and through the pandemic, we've made drop-in available both in person and continued our Zoom drop-in support services. Each academy has a coordinator who also teaches the first year experience course, and those coordinators are accessible, they are available, they're basically the principal of the small school within a school that we run. Faculty also have support and resources. We have a faculty learning community team that works really hard to make sure faculty have access to us. Talked to a faculty member this morning who is struggling a little bit with how to grade a particular student. So the faculty also get that same thing. They develop a community with each other, but they also have a team of support within our program. Number 5, our value is ongoing faculty development and community. Our students are only as good as their faculty. So faculty really have to learn and embrace education equity, both in themselves, but in the classroom and in the curriculum they teach. Our faculty development is planned, it's rigorous, challenging, and supportive, but also has a critical pedagogical lens attached to it. Faculty often find themselves in spaces where they're able to be vulnerable and share, hey, you know what, I tried this thing in my classroom, it really didn't work, I'm not sure what to do next. And they get a chance to be together and have a common language around critical thinking, but also for them to unpack some of their beliefs about students and some of the biases that we all, hold in the society that we live in. We really do believe that students change through the curriculum, and so do the faculty, that they change as well through the faculty training. Our 6th value is a commitment to valuing and recruiting diverse students, faculty, and staff. As I mentioned, our tutors are former Metro students. We do what we can to hire from within. We have a number of former Metro students working for us as staff as well. And we really are working towards trying to diversify ethnicity, class background, as well as our lived experience within our faculty. I will also say it's been a challenge with faculty, but we do targeted outreach and recruitment of faculty to make sure that we get folks that most closely represent the student population that we're trying to serve. We are also limited by the fact that we are working with adjunct faculty for the most part, and many of them they're contingent, so they're teaching at many different institutions. So this is an ongoing value that we want to continue to work with. We also recruit students. We have targeted recruitment for the student population we're trying to serve. And we really connect students from the beginning when they do their application all the way through. They connect with a human being, with a person on campus that they can continue to ask questions about, questions to. So we'll take just a minute now to do the same thing that MaryBeth asked us to do before, which is just to write down a few words on your paper about these values, ways in which you might think that you're doing that on your own campuses or on your own institutions, or ways that you might want to, areas to continue to grow in. So we'll just take a few minutes to do that before we move on to the next slide. All right, I'm going to turn it back to MaryBeth for the last three.
Okay, so our seventh value is we make equity central and let's develop collective expectations around these shared values. The value of repeatedly affirming the importance of equity at the university and critical consciousness regarding the inequity faced and the resilience nature of our students, thus creating the expectations that all members of the community are working towards the achievement of greater equity and justice in our society. We really do try to give feedback up about how the university in its larger sense could be doing things. I think I said that we're 13 years old, and the truth is many of the things the university is now doing around student success and critical consciousness are being done across the university. At San Francisco State, social justice is really a core value for the entire campus. And also with regard to the leadership in Metro, these values have been reflected on with our staff. They know the importance of them to the work that we do. And they've also had a lot of made a big contributions to which ones we highlight as being values, so that it can also, those values can also direct their work, each of our faculty, staff, and student workers. Number 8 is we are very committed to doing critical reflection and improvement of our equity efforts, informed by both qualitative and quantitative data. We are constantly changing. Our curriculum evolves regularly, and it involves with the input from all of the faculty that are teaching that core course. For instance, before the semester begins, we ask faculty who are teaching that first year experience to meet together and talk about what worked, what didn't work, and what they want to change in the curriculum for the next semester. So we collect frequent feedback from faculty and students, and we have a pretty extensive Salesforce system that helps us really track what we're doing and what impact we're having. And the last one is something that I think everyone on this session can relate to, is that we really challenge oppression in all its forms. Our cohorts are based on career themes. No student is turned away from Metro. And that means that we have students from all race, ethnicity, and all different shades of gender and etc. And that we value that, recognizing disempowering education and social structures, not the students, as the unit of change to improve academic and lifelong fulfillment. And that really students working together, both in the classroom, faculty working together, and we as citizens working together is how we will make that difference. Savi, you want to throw it back to you to work us out of this?
Perfect, thank you. So here are the 9 core values. We're going to go ahead and put them in the chat, and we're going to ask you all to engage in a little activity with us in breakouts of 2. So the next few minutes, and we'll probably take 10 minutes in your groups and then just do a short report back before we have a time for question and answer. But you can see the 9 core values here. Like I said, we'll put them back into the chat. Alicia, do you mind putting the next slide up, please? Thank you. So we're going to ask you to take a minute to choose one of the core values that you resonate with, and how would you like to see it transformed in your unit, in your institution, in your organization, wherever you come from. It says in your threesome, but we're going to put you in pairs. Discuss how you might move forward toward that transformation. You're going to be asked to report out as a group, a very short report out, a couple minutes each, but we do want each of you to have a chance to talk to each other. So maybe what we'll do is we'll do 8 minutes in the pairs, and then we'll come back and report out so we have enough time for questions at the end. We'll go ahead and drop this into the chat right now. Those are the 9 values. And again, we're just going to ask you to take a minute to choose one that you resonate with and talk about in a pair. So here are the instructions. Hopefully you'll all be able to see them in your groups. So right now it's, depending on where you are, we're 38 after the hour. And we'll take 8 minutes, so we'll return back at 46 from the groups.
I'm going to open all the rooms now.
Thank you very much.
So we lost half the group, just as an FYI.
When we put them in breakouts.
Yeah, it happens a lot now. That is the norm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many people are at the whole conference? Today?
Well, so when you register for basically the 2 days. So there's almost 700 over the 2 days. There was, I think in the opening sessions I saw like 220 was kind of a number that looked at it, and it's definitely much smaller in the breakout rooms from what I'm hearing from colleagues. Which attention schedules.
Yeah, so people are coming in and out. They might be just coming to the plenary or whatever.
Yeah, and on the East Coast it's almost 5. So people are so that's the there's all those factors. Unfortunately, it's hard to do these things.
Yeah.
I intentionally did not put on a timer on it, but we can just do a manual.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll let them know when they have 2 minutes left, and we'll bring it back.
Do we pause the recording in a breakout room, or does it?
I did not.
What's that? Would you say?
Wondering if we should pause the recording.
I need to stay muted.
Awesome. Folks, thank you. Thanks so much for coming back. We're just going to ask each group to report very briefly, like for a minute or two, the value that you talked about and anything that you heard that was exciting, innovative, or made you think. So one thing from each group very quickly.
I'll just say very quickly, Jennifer, you can speak for yourself, but about community connectedness, purposeful community building is an ongoing theme with me, because I know that sometimes when we talk about civic discourse and community versus civic, or what's the difference? And for me, a lot of times African Americans were not considered citizens, and so we didn't really fit into personhood. So that's a big piece of how do students I guess what I try to do is help students to understand that. How does someone who has lived that? I grew up in an elementary school in a very segregated society, segregated Charlottesville. And someone who hasn't experienced that, my children didn't experience that. How do you, without, you're not trying to get anybody to get a tissue or, to feel sorry for you. So how do you convey those experiences to make people think you're not coming to the extended communities just to extract from us? Because it could be we need to start telling our own stories, being able to tell them in our own way. So why are you really here? Those kinds of things without, sounding like you're trying to drive people away. But what I try to do is engage them in reparative, or we're talking about the work of repair, redress, reparative or reparative genealogy, so that we can start having this honest discourse of looking at history holistically. And then we're getting past some of this performative stuff and going into hopefully a more transformative mode of thinking. And that's what I've been trying to do between William and Mary and the University of Virginia, is try to hopefully get the students to understand you really have not walked in my moccasins, but I can only help you to meet, not just in theory, not in a textbook, to meet someone like me, so that you can maybe hear a firsthand story. Let me tell my own story so I can help you to understand. So that's all I have to say.
Beautifully said, Diane. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
I'll pick up since she and I were together. One of the other things that we're seeing, I'm in a small community college in Southern Arkansas, and we've been working on that community collaboration and just making sure that everybody's feeling welcome. That has been a key component of everything for the last year or so, maybe a couple of years now. But one of the things that we've started to engage in, actually this forum has actually created this new team for us that includes K-12 and the community college. And we're all working together so that the civic learning, as we're discussing this, it's not just a K-12 issue or just the community college, but how do we embrace it as an entire community with K-12 involved, with the community college, with everyone having these discussions and pulling in the civic learning aspect of things for students, so that it's not just something you hear in class, but we live it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer. One thing we should have mentioned too is that Metro we have a partnership with City College of San Francisco, and we started that way. So very much aligned with what you're discussing there. Thank you. Paul and Jennifer, in the last 4 minutes that we have of the presentation, either of you want to share anything from your group?
I really enjoyed our conversation. It was, it ranged from, I really enjoyed Jennifer's reflection on that value number one of the belonging and what it means to belong, and how a sense of belonging changes not just for the individual student or the program, but really thinking institutionally about making institutions as a whole more equitable. And I think our conversation sort of ranged from, that sense of, the core value of number one, to how all the values might be able to fit together and flow together as a more integrated kind of whole.
Thank you, Paul. Jennifer, anything to add before we close today? Okay. Thank you all so much for engaging in the conversations with each other and with us. We have just 3 minutes left. If there are any questions or things that we could answer kind of as we shut down today, as we close the session.
So how do you position your program in relationship with the institution? We talked a little bit about this. Do you see yourself as sort of the seedbed of change for the larger institution? Do you see yourself as a pocket of subversive activity? Do you see yourself as networked with allies? Do you see, like, as we've seen in some campuses, that programs like this are in conflict with the institution? How do you see yourself in relationship to the larger institution?
Yeah, we definitely, our last provost defined it us as the nest within Google. And the nest was, so it would be more like an innovation bed. And we have seen over the last many years, one after the other of the things that we do are now institutionalized and the entire campus is doing it. Like one of the things, for example, is that we identify students who are not registered for the next semester classes. And then we have a campaign to call them and text them to talk to them about coming back. And so we've been doing that for, probably 10 years, and the university is now doing that across campus for all the students. We went from advising being an academic drop-in, you see whatever advisors available, to being that students, as they are with us, our students see the same advisor every time, and that's what our advising team is. And so now students are assigned advisors for the first 2 years, so that the student gets to know the advisor there, and so it's not a totally, you see them once and you don't see them again. So I think I could continue. We identified that students were getting holds for owing the university $10, which was getting a big, really a problem. And now I think they've moved it up to $1,000. So there's just a lot of ways that, we've pulled the curtain back, and the university has made changes based on what we have seen.
I think we just hit time. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you for engaging in our conversation, and we look forward to more in future sessions.
Thank you so much.